The gavel slammed down like a thunderclap. This court orders temporary custody of Ava Willis be transferred to the state of California, effective immediately. The room went silent. Bruce Willis sat frozen in the front row, his hands gripping the edge of the bench, knuckles white. He wasn't just a legendary actor here, he was a grandfather, watching his family crack open like a fault line. His daughter Melanie stood at the defendant's table, jaw clenched, tears forming but refusing to fall. Across from her, Ava, just 11 years old, stared forward, stone-faced. No one could have predicted it would come to this. Outside, the downtown Los Angeles courthouse shimmered under a blistering sun, the concrete radiating heat that only added to the tension inside. Cameras flashed, reporters yelled questions as the courtroom emptied, but none of it touched Bruce. All he could hear was Ava's small voice in his head from the night before. "Grandpa, do you believe me?" Yes, he had believed her. Every word. But now, the judge had seen something else. A system had moved faster than their voices, and now a child's life was being redirected by people who'd never spent a single quiet moment with her. Melanie finally turned, reaching for Ava as two court officers approached. "Sweetheart, don't be scared, okay? I'm going to fix this, I swear." Ava's eyes flicked to her mother, then down. She didn't say a word. She didn't cry. She didn't fight. The courtroom door opened as they walked her out. Bruce followed, stepping into the hallway as Ava disappeared around the corner. Melanie stumbled to a bench, burying her face in her hands. The cameras pressed closer outside the courthouse doors, shouting Bruce's name. But he wasn't Bruce Willis right now. He was just a grandfather watching a nightmare unfold. 2 weeks earlier, it had started with a phone call. "Dad, can you come? It's Ava. I think someone's trying to take her from me." Bruce had flown from Idaho to LA overnight. When he arrived, Melanie was frantic. Not manic, just scared. She said her ex-husband Todd had filed a petition for full custody, claiming she was unstable, unfit. She said a social worker had shown up at Ava's school without notice, that someone had called in an anonymous tip. "I've been clean for 6 years," Melanie insisted. "You know that." Bruce nodded. He did know that. He'd walked with her through every rehab, every relapse, every recovery. He also knew Todd. He knew the way that man looked at money, at power, at control. Ava had always been Melanie's shadow, never afraid of her, always tethered to her side like something magnetic. But now she seemed quieter, more withdrawn. That night, Bruce had sat on the back porch with Ava, the California dusk fading into lavender. "Grandpa?" she asked, voice small. "If I told the truth, would they believe me?" He looked at her. Really looked. "What truth?" She hesitated. "About what I saw, about what Todd did." Bruce's stomach dropped, but before he could ask more, she shook her head, stood up and went inside. Back in the present, Melanie looked up. "She's scared, Dad. But not of me. You saw it, didn't you?" Bruce didn't answer right away. He stared at the door Ava had vanished through. "Yes," he said finally. "I saw it." And something in his voice shifted, like steel hardening. This wasn't over, not even close. If you felt that tension, if you're already hooked by Ava's quiet strength and Bruce's resolve, subscribe and drop a comment below. Let's see this story through together. Ava hated the quiet of the group home. It wasn't real quiet. There were always footsteps in the hallway, doors clicking open and shut, whispers behind thin walls. But it was a kind of silence that soaked into your skin, the kind that made you feel like you didn't belong anywhere. She sat on the edge of a twin bed, the cheap mattress rustling beneath her, staring at the folded paper in her lap. A note. Her mom had managed to sneak it into her backpack the day the officers took her. "Be brave, baby. Tell the truth when you're ready. I love you always." Her hands trembled as she folded it again. Her throat was tight. The truth. But every time she thought about speaking it aloud, her chest closed up. She could still hear his voice. "You say anything and I'll make sure your mom goes away forever." That was Todd, her father on paper but never in her heart. He hadn't lived with them in years, hadn't called unless there was a court date or some fight about money. And now he wanted custody? No. He wanted control, again. Meanwhile, Bruce wasn't sleeping. He sat in Melanie's apartment, the small one-bedroom in Echo Park, staring at the wall. He couldn't shake the image of Ava's face as they took her away, expressionless but not blank. It was guarded, like someone who had learned too early not to let anyone in. He'd seen faces like that before, at rehab centers, in holding rooms, on movie sets, playing men who'd been broken by the world. Only Ava was real, and she was only 11. The door creaked open. Melanie stepped in, her eyes red-rimmed. She was holding a file folder. "I need you to see this." She dropped the folder in his lap. Inside were photos, hospital reports, custody filings, emails between lawyers. One photo stopped Bruce cold. Ava, at age 7, a bruise blooming across her ribs. "It was Todd," Melanie said quietly. "She finally told me last year, said he pushed her down the stairs when he was drunk. I filed a report, but the case didn't go anywhere. Not enough evidence, they said." Bruce's jaw clenched. "And now he's using the system to punish her for talking," she added. "He's got money, connections, and he's got that fake smile everyone believes." Bruce flipped through the paperwork, his fingers trembling. "She needs to speak in court, on the record." Melanie shook her head. "She's terrified, Dad. You saw her. She's just a kid." Bruce looked up at her. "She's a kid who already knows more about pain than most adults. But I know Ava. She's strong." He stood up, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling my attorney." She's not alone in this. 3 days later, Ava sat on a hard wooden chair inside a tiny therapy room. A child psychologist sat across from her, kind eyes, gentle voice. "You don't have to say anything you don't want to," she told Ava. "But if there's something you think the judge needs to hear, I'll write it down." Ava looked at the woman, then at the table, then at her folded hands. There was a long silence. Then Ava whispered something so low the woman had to lean in. "What was that?" the therapist asked gently. Ava raised her voice just enough. "I saw him hurt my mum. I saw him push her. He said he'd hurt me too if I told." And just like that, the silence cracked. The courtroom was still, as if everyone had collectively forgotten to breathe. Ava sat in the witness box, legs dangling inches from the floor, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her voice had wavered at first, barely above a whisper, but now it held something stronger, something steady. "And when I told him to stop yelling at my mom, he grabbed my arm really hard. I had a bruise for 2 weeks. The judge leaned forward. "And this was your father, Mr. Todd Willis?" Ava nodded. From his table, Todd shifted in his seat, a practiced mask of concern on his face. But the tightness around his eyes betrayed something else, something no jury or judge could miss now. Bruce sat behind Ava, back straight, heart pounding. He had watched her walk in alone, small but determined, and now he couldn't believe the words spilling from her like a dam breaking. The courtroom wasn't silent out of formality anymore. It was gripped. The judge cleared his throat. "Ava, I need to ask, do you feel safe with your father?" She didn't hesitate. "No." "And with your mother?" "Yes." He paused. "Would you feel safe returning home to your mother if the court approved it?" Another clear yes. There it was. The judge looked down at his notes, his jaw tense. Todd's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we object to this line of questioning without cross-examination." "Denied," the judge said sharply. "This child has a right to be heard, and she is being heard." Melanie stifled a sob behind Bruce. She reached forward, gently resting her hand on his shoulder. "She's doing it. She's really doing it." Bruce didn't take his eyes off his granddaughter. She wasn't performing. She wasn't rehearsed. She was remembering, clearly, painfully, bravely. Later, outside the courthouse, the sky was overcast, a rare break in LA's endless sunshine. The press was waiting again, but Bruce held Ava close, ignoring every camera flash. Melanie stood beside them, not hiding anymore. "How do you feel, sweetheart?" Bruce asked, kneeling beside her on the steps. Ava blinked. "Tired," he smiled. "That's fair." She looked at him, something uncertain in her eyes. "Did I do the right thing?" Bruce's heart clenched. "You did the brave thing. That's almost always the right thing." A social worker approached them. "The judge is reviewing the testimony. We should know in the next day or two if Ava can go home." Melanie stepped forward. "Can I see her until then?" The worker nodded. "Supervised visits are allowed, yes, starting today." Ava's eyes lit up, the first spark of joy Bruce had seen in weeks. "Can we go to the bookstore?" she asked. Melanie grinned. "Of course. We'll sit on the floor and read like we used to." Ava hugged her tightly. That evening, Bruce sat in a coffee shop across from his attorney. "There's still a chance Todd pushes back," she warned. "He might file an emergency motion, claim manipulation." "I don't care," Bruce said. "We're not backing down. He has a powerful law firm." "So do I. Now." He leaned forward. "This is bigger than one custody case. It's about kids who don't get heard." Ava cracked that silence. "We're going to make sure it stays open." The attorney nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready." Bruce looked out the window at the gathering dusk, thinking not of legal strategy or headlines, but of Ava's voice, clear and strong, cutting through years of silence. That voice had changed everything. The emergency hearing was scheduled less than 48 hours later. Todd Willis showed up in a tailored suit, his tie a perfect Windsor knot, his expression sculpted into wounded concern. His new attorney, a litigator from a top LA firm, followed close behind, clutching a thick folder of affidavits and statements. It was clear he was coming for a final blow. Melanie and Bruce sat side by side at the table, flanked by their own legal team. Ava wasn't present this time. The court had agreed not to expose her to more trauma, but her testimony echoed through every line of the judge's preamble. This hearing will determine whether Ava Willis is to remain in state custody, be returned to her mother, or transferred to her father's care pending a final trial. Bruce didn't flinch, but inside, a storm churned. Todd's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we respectfully assert that Ms. Willis has manipulated her daughter into making false claims. We have signed statements from 2 former neighbors attesting to erratic behavior in the home, shouting late at night, and 1 claim of suspected drug use." Melanie's jaw tightened, but she remained still. Bruce leaned toward their attorney. "They're painting her as unstable again." "I know," she said. "We'll counter it." The judge raised a hand. "Enough. Submit the documents. I'll review them." "Ms. Willis's counsel?" Melanie's attorney stood. "We have medical records confirming Ms. Willis has been clean for over 6 years, full custody records showing she's provided a stable environment, and school counselor reports describing Ava as well-adjusted until recent contact with her father." Then she paused. "And, Your Honor, we would also like to submit a digital recording." The judge frowned. "Of what nature?" Bruce stood. "Ava's voice." The court was silent. The judge nodded. "Play it." The room filled with Ava's voice, crackling slightly over the speaker, but unmistakably clear. "I didn't want to say anything, but he used to come over late, and he'd yell at my mom. Once I tried to stop him and he shoved me. I was scared. He told me if I told anyone he'd take me away from her forever. I didn't think anyone would believe me." A hush fell again. Even Todd looked shaken, but only for a moment. Then the mask slid back into place. The judge recessed for an hour. Bruce waited with Melanie in the corridor, pacing, restless. "It's going to come down to whether they believe her voice over his money." Melanie shook her head. "It should have never gotten this far." She looked at her father. "Do you think I failed her?" Bruce turned to her, fierce and certain. "No, you survived, you stood up, and now she's doing the same. That's not failure, that's legacy." The door opened. "Court is back in session." Everyone rose as the judge re-entered. "I've reviewed the testimony, the supporting documents, and the submitted recording. I believe the child's account is credible and corroborated. Therefore," Bruce gripped Melanie's hand, "full custody will be returned to Ms. Melanie Willis effective immediately. All contact with Mr. Willis is hereby suspended, pending further investigation." Todd's mouth fell open. His attorney stood ready to object, but the judge held up a hand. "This matter is closed. Court adjourned." The gavel came down. Melanie gasped. Bruce closed his eyes, the tension melting from his shoulders. They had done it. They had believed her. The door opened slowly. Ava stepped into the apartment, like it was a place she used to visit in a dream. Familiar, but changed. The scent of her mother's lavender candles still lingered faintly in the air. Her favorite blanket was folded on the couch, and the walls held the same family photos, slightly tilted, slightly dusty, exactly the way she remembered. Melanie stood behind her, watching carefully. "You okay, baby?" Ava didn't answer right away. She walked into the living room and touched the back of the couch. Then she nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." It was a strange feeling, this kind of relief. Not the loud kind with cheering or tears, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing the worst is finally behind you, that someone had listened, that you could exhale now without fear. Bruce sat in the armchair by the window, smiling as she came over and hugged him without a word. He held her close. "You did good, kiddo." Ava pulled back, eyes serious. "Is he really gone?" Bruce nodded. "He won't be near you anymore. The court made it clear, and there's going to be an investigation into what he did." Ava looked down at her hands. "He made me feel crazy." Melanie knelt beside her. "You weren't. You're not. You were brave. You saw something that was wrong and you spoke up. That's power." Ava's eyes welled, but she blinked fast, refusing to cry. "I didn't want to be the reason everything broke." "You weren't," Bruce said gently. "You were the reason it got fixed." Later that evening, they sat in a circle on the floor, a takeout pizza box open between them. Bruce poured orange soda into plastic cups, while Melanie scrolled through old photos on her phone, showing Ava pictures from when she was a baby, her first tooth, her first steps, her 4th birthday party when she cried because the cake had a typo. They laughed. For the first time in months, they laughed like nothing was hanging over them. And Ava asked something simple. "Can I sleep in your bed tonight?" she said to her mom. Melanie pulled her into a hug. "Of course." That night, Bruce stood outside on the balcony looking out over Echo Park Lake. The city buzzed below, neon lights flickering, traffic humming like background music to a movie that finally had a peaceful ending. Melanie joined him, a blanket around her shoulders. "She asked me if I'd ever leave her again," she whispered. "What did you say?" "I told her no, not for anything." Bruce nodded slowly. "She's lucky to have you." Melanie turned to him. "No, we're lucky to have her." They stood in silence for a moment. "Dad," she said finally, "thank you for believing me. Years ago, when I was the one who couldn't speak yet." He looked at her, eyes glassy. "It's what parents do. We show up when the world walks out." Inside, Ava lay curled in bed, clutching her old stuffed elephant, the one she hadn't touched in months. The moonlight poured in across the floor, soft and silver. She whispered into the quiet room, almost like a prayer, "I'm still me." And this time she believed it. If Ava's journey moved you, if you believe in the strength of quiet voices and the power of truth, subscribe and click the next video on screen. It was chosen just for you, and you're going to love it.